Welcome to another episode of Gospel Entrepreneurs in partnership with UCB. And we're going to hear from Jenny, who sees a need, which every entrepreneur sees, but then she has the courage to change it. She set up a brand new organization called Counseling Carers, and she can tell part of her story of how God opened up that opportunity to her and the way she's now doing it. So thanks for listening, and let's dive straight in. Jenny, it's great to have you on the show.
It's brilliant to be here. Thanks, Roy.
And tell us a bit about you. You live in Oxford, is that right?
I do, yes. I'm looking out of my window at the sunny Oxford sky right now. I am mum to 3 children. I'm married to the wonderful John. My kids are 13, 11 and 8. I don't have a 3-year-old.
And you train professionally in caring, really, but give us your background to how you got into the ministry that you now run, or the business that you now run.
So it's a slightly odd story. My undergraduate degree was in biblical studies, so I'm a bit of a Bible geek. And then when I first went to work after I'd graduated, I was doing some temp work with a building company, actually, doing their tenant liaison. And oddly, what I found was that people wanted to tell me their stories. So I would turn up at somebody's house to find out if their bath panel had arrived and find myself an hour later sitting looking at their family photos. And I thought to myself, goodness, people really need to talk. I wonder if this is something I could actually do for a living. So I went and I trained as a therapist. I've done all sorts of different trainings over the years. So I would describe myself as integrative because I've done CBT therapy and person-centered therapy. And I'm currently on a training doing dyadic developmental psychotherapy. There's all sorts of different ones. But the real heart of it is I just love to hear people's stories. I love to help them kind of work out what those niggles are. How do I get over this? Like, how do I come to terms with difficult things in my life? And so that has very much been what I've been doing for the last, 16 years now.
Amazing. So counselling, listening to people's stories, people obviously feel at ease with you because they will tell you their story. You must have that empathetic personality or something, Jenny, that people just open up to you. But it's a bit different moving from there to setting up a business that actually does that. Were you entrepreneurial at all in your background? I mean, biblical studies and all of that. But as a child, did you do that kind of thing?
No, I have never run my own business, really. I'm very much describe myself as an accidental entrepreneur. It was more that I saw a need and nobody else was doing it. And I am the kind of person who thinks, well, if nobody's doing this, I'd better do it myself.
And there was a little bit of a God moment in that, wasn't there, Jenny, really? Give us that story.
So it really ties into kind of my personal experience as a mum. My middle daughter has some quite complex health challenges, and I started to notice, kind of with my professional hat on when I was being mum, that nobody ever asked us how we were. How are you coping? I'd kind of had this idea on a back burner, like maybe somebody should be doing this. Didn't really necessarily think it was me, but sort of had, maybe. And then late 2019, I don't know if many of your listeners might have had a similar experience. You get to the end of the year and you start thinking, what's next year going to look like? What am I going to do? And I was with a group of other Christians and we were all kind of reflecting on the year we'd had and what we were expecting and hoping for from God for the year to come. And we were all writing it on this piece of A4 paper. And I felt God really strongly say to me, don't fill the space. And so that's all I wrote on my piece of paper for 2020. And I'm sure many of you are like, oh, lucky you. You didn't do anything in 2020. And it was brilliant. 2020 rolled around, obviously. COVID happened. And I'd actually turned down some work because I felt very strongly that God had said, don't fill the space. And that's when later I started to really have that space to kind of reflect and be like, nobody is doing this. Maybe it's time. I need to set something up.
And nobody was asking you how you were in relation to your daughter. Is that the issue here? Or what did you feel nobody was asking the question?
So more broadly, nobody was asking any carers how they were emotionally. How are you coping with caring. There was no kind of systems within the hospitals or anything that, oh, your child gets a diagnosis or your elderly parent gets a diagnosis or your spouse has an accident. There was no system for, and actually there should be some emotional support for you as the carer who is going to have to deal with this, because actually potentially your life has been completely upended. Your plans have gone. There are lots of things to grieve, new things to learn, and absolutely nothing that said, oh, the carers are really important in this journey. We need to support their well-being. It was all focused on, okay, this is the patient. We will treat the patient, which obviously is really important. And I looked around and I couldn't find any dedicated organisations for supporting carers with therapy, like proper psychotherapy, counselling, to make sure that they were resilient and emotionally well. So I then had a conversation with my good friend Rich. He's an economist. And I said, what do you think about this idea? You know, you're more of a numbers man. Do you think we can make this work? And if so, would you be on my board? And he said, yes, I think you can make it work. And no, I won't be on your board. To cut a long story short, he's on my board.
And what is it that you do?
So we provide therapy for anybody that has a caring role. So that can be someone who's got a child like mine that's got some additional needs. We have a lot of people whose elderly relatives have dementia. That's a really, really tough one to get your head around as that relationship changes. We have people who've had husbands or wives who've catastrophic accidents or who have developed kind of lifelong, life-limiting conditions. We have people who are foster carers and adopters who are actually looking after children who are in the care system. All of them who come to us at various different stages in their journey because actually they need space to process their own feelings. They need their own kind of time to make sense of the changes in their lives, the way that it impacts them. There's actually some statistics from Carers UK who have found that 79% of carers feel stressed or anxious, and over a quarter of them describe their mental health as bad or very bad.
Wow.
And so that's the landscape that we're working in.
Do you work with local authorities or hospitals, or are you just out there and people need to find you to get the help or support they look for? Because it sounds like it's a massive area of need. And there's you, Jenny, and maybe one or two others.
So we started off with just me on my own, and within 3 months, I had a waiting list that was beyond what I could possibly manage on my own. So coming up to 4 years later, we now have 11 therapists on our books. And Rich, who started off as a volunteer, we had another volunteer director as well, Ingrid. Rich has now come on as managing director so that he's doing a lot more of the business development side of things. And we operate on a really kind of wide range. So we have some people who hear about us word of mouth and just come directly to us. We do have some not directly local authority contracts, but the local authority funds carers organisations around the country. And some of those carers organisations come directly to us because also, as I'm sure many of your listeners have already kind of thought, but hang on a minute, lots of carers don't have any money. They're often unpaid. And that's really important to us, that actually our service is available to everybody. And so some of those carers organisations contract us in so that they can offer either free at point of use counselling or very low cost counselling so that nobody is left out. And we're a non-profit, so any profit that we make, we plough back into subsidising sessions ourselves. So if somebody comes directly to us as well, who maybe hasn't got a local authority in their area or a hospital in their area that's working with us, we can still say, actually, yes, we can help subsidise your sessions because your mental health really matters to us.
It must be quite difficult, Jenny, for someone to reach out to you, because do they feel a sense of shame or failure, or have they just reached the end and I've got to get help from somewhere?
It will depend hugely on the person. A lot of people do come to us because somebody else has said this would be a good idea, and we've had people come in going, oh, well, I felt very sceptical at first, and then actually it was absolutely transformative. Those are, stories that we love to hear. But we also have people who've had very positive experiences of therapy in the past, or who have had somebody come alongside them who has really kind of advocated for how good this will be, who are actually very excited to come in because they've been on their own for such a long time, carrying the burden of caring for somebody and not feeling like they can talk about it. And it then makes a huge difference to have somebody who is dedicated just for them, who really wants to hear their story, who can really empathise with it. Because actually we hear really, really hard things. People are having to deal with absolutely devastating situations sometimes, and things that they've just had no preparation for, that are very, very emotionally draining. And having somebody that you can say some of those really hard things to makes a huge difference. And to kind of be like, actually, some days I don't want to get up. I don't want to do this anymore. When they feel like they can't say that to the doctor, they can't say that to the person that they're caring for, but they can say it to us, and they know that we will hold them and we will support them and we'll walk alongside them. And that in itself is often enough to just help them keep going.
And obviously you're professional, but you have faith. How does faith link into this? Or is that a tension? Is that a conflict? Because you're talking with people, many that I'm sure don't have faith.
Yes, we are. And we don't exist as a Christian organisation per se. Those of us who set up the organisation are all Christians, and we very much feel that this is an outworking of who we are and our faith and how we operate, and that it's very much a part of building God's kingdom, that actually looking after the most vulnerable in society is something that is really, really important to God. And so it's really, really important to us. But we will speak to absolutely anybody who comes through the door. So we have people of all faiths and none. And some people are very much actually engaged in that space. And we find that we do get quite a lot of Christians, actually, because when they hear that not only are we doing this, but often many of our therapists are approaching it from a Christian perspective, they want to come and talk to us, and they very much want to talk about their spiritual journey. Other people really don't, or other people come from other faiths and they want to talk about what their faith means to them in their caring journey. And we try and hold that tension all the time of, we're here for everybody and we want to see the image of God in everybody, because we believe that God really loves all of the people who come through our door, regardless of what they believe.
And do you have the opportunity to pray with some of these people? Would that be something you would do, or would that not be something you would do?
It's not something that I do very often in my practice, and it certainly wouldn't be something we would expect of people. But if a client came along and said, do you know what, actually, could we pray together about this in the session? Then absolutely, that would be on the table.
Great. So moving on, you link with local authorities. How does that work? Obviously, the National Health is a massive organisation and you're a small piece within it, because the opportunity for this is enormous.
Yes, and we kind of look out and we think, well, we're still really the only people doing this. You know, we would love to be the go-to organisation for anybody who's got a caring role and wants mental health support. And that's kind of our long-term big vision. But as you say, it's really tricky. You know, there's not huge pots of money out there, and we're not very well known at the moment. We are only really 3.5 years in, and yet the growth in that has been absolutely exponential. So we find that carers organisations in particular, those who care about mental health, who for them it's one of their priorities, when they find out about us, they're like, right, how do we sign up? We are exploring at the moment avenues for how do we sit within the NHS as well. There are lots and lots of research projects going on all around the country at various universities and different sorts of levels around how a carer is supported. And so we're looking at how can we develop relationships there so that we can showcase what we do, because actually what we've found in our little measures that we do within our team, we use something called CORE, which is an NHS outcome measure for emotional well-being. And 90% of people who do a course of therapy with us come out having had a significant improvement in their mental health. And it's astonishing the impact that it can have. And so we want to be able to make that available more widely. And so we're always kind of looking for partners as well who are interested in seeing this and doing more of this, researching it with us, providing it together with us. But it is a challenge because, especially for me, I'm first and foremost a therapist. I want to build a relationship with people. I want to work in therapy. And it's what's really wonderful that actually now I get to work together with Rich, and he's doing a lot more of that business side of things that I was doing before, because we both then get to do something we're more passionate about.
And do you find that as you came up with the idea You're now in partnership with Rich to see that come about. How do you feel as this expands? You're going to hold the values quite close to you, I'm sure, because as you expand out, those values can be lost, can't they?
They can, and that's a challenge I think that we're trying to address a little bit at the moment, actually, thinking about how do we become very explicit about what our values are within our team and for our clients, so that as it grows, as our roles change, potentially in the future, we might not be the people running this organization anymore. How do we build a legacy of the importance of things like caring for the vulnerable, that actually we're not in this to make lots of money. We're in this to really see people being cared for. And how do we keep that as a really core value of what we do? How do we keep that value of every single person mattering, whether they're a member of staff, whether they're a client, whether they're our accountants, like that everybody on our team really matters. Those are the kind of values that we want to tease out and make really explicit so that everybody in the organisation feels like we're on the same page.
And has it been a good journey? Because you were on your own for the first year, weren't you?
I was, yes. It's been quite exciting. Therapy is an odd sort of job where actually, even if you work in a big team, you spend most of the day one-to-one with clients. I work from home, so I spend most of the time at home by myself with my dog, just talking to people online like we're doing now. So it's really nice to kind of have a sense of a little bit more of a team, but it is lonely. And we try hard, as we have more therapists on board now as well, to have little moments in our week where we can connect with each other and give people the opportunity to be part of something a little bit bigger and not have that sense of isolation.
And obviously, you've got faith, you're part of a church community. What can the church learn from what you're doing, or where does the church have a role in this? You've done theology, so you've got a biblical framework for this as well, I'm sure.
I think quite often as Christians, we have a tendency to think, well, we should all be looking after people. But sometimes it's really easy within our church communities to miss those people who are going above and beyond, who are maybe really at the end of themselves, those who've maybe got foster children or who have got children with additional needs, or perhaps whose parents have suddenly deteriorated and maybe life looked quite normal and not very complicated before and it's suddenly changed. And I think it's really important for us as a church community to actually have our eyes open to those who are caring, because caring has a huge burden. And in our lifetime, 2 in 3 of us will be carers at some point. And so we might not be now, but actually if we can build cultures within our churches where we look after the carers in the same way that within counselling carers, we're looking after carers, then actually we know that we can kind of rest in a culture where if and when it happens to us, which it likely will, there'll be people around us who have got us, who will support us, who might bring us meals or take time helping us with the person that we're caring for, maybe giving us a bit of respite. And that's a really important aspect of what we do as church.
You've met with a lot of people. Is there some common things? Is it the aloneness? Is it isolation? Is it a lack of understanding? What do these people that are caring seem to walk through?
There are definitely some common themes. One is very much grieving the life that you were expecting, whether that's through looking after someone who was actually your parent, your carer, your main support, and adjusting to that sense of like, oh goodness, this person who I've always relied on is now relying on me. And especially for those who are dealing with dementia, that living grief of just watching the person in front of you deteriorate is really devastating, and it's very, very difficult. And we see that a lot. But simultaneously, we see at the other end as well, especially when people have got young children who are very physically disabled or who've got learning disabilities, and the impact that that has on family life, in the sense of like, once upon a time, we could just open the door and walk out and go out for a day. And actually now that might take months of planning. Like, well, either we're going to have to leave somebody behind and put all the care needs in place, or who's going to be there at the other end? Do they have the right facilities? Do we have enough people with us to help us take this child? And the simplicity of just being able to go about our normal lives is gone, and there's a huge amount of grief attached to that. And there's a lot of crossover with what we do with grief counselling, because actually that readjustment is very similar. And often there's also just sometimes practical steps as well. I mean, people are often not sleeping, and when you're not sleeping, it's really hard to think straight. So sometimes we end up almost taking slightly more of a social work role for people and kind of having to signpost them and saying, look, we're going to walk alongside you with this journey, but also here's some other people that you could talk to who would come alongside you. We walk a lot with people who are battling the education system. Unfortunately, at the moment, our education system is very, very challenging for carers. And it's really difficult to know who to talk to, what piece of paper you have to fill in. Lots and lots of people that we work with are going through tribunal processes with the local authority, and it's incredibly stressful. And so just having somebody who can walk alongside you in that, but also maybe point you in the right direction occasionally and say, oh, well, actually, if you come across this other organisation that supports that, is a really important aspect of what we do.
You stepped into this in 21 and now it's growing, it's expanding. How are you doing in that? Is that kind of, Lord, this is yours and I'm paddling underwater, but above or are you feeling, hey, this is an amazing God opportunity that I'm just embracing and enjoying the ride? Or are you like, I'm not sure? Where are you at?
Oh, it's a bit of a roller coaster. There are definitely days when I'm like, this is fantastic. I can't believe where we've got to. This is beyond my wildest dreams and it's going further. And other days when I'm going, oh my goodness, we've got to get another contract in. Like, we need some more money. How are we going to pay the staff? And don't worry, staff, we are going to pay you if you were listening to this. But yeah, there's a joy in that change and that kind of sense of being on an adventure. But there's also, it can be quite stressful. And certainly the responsibility of like, actually, it was fine when it was just me and I had to make sure that I had enough clients. I was balancing the books, but all of a sudden the responsibility of like, oh, there's lots of other people, then we've got to take this really seriously. It's exciting, but it is also a bit of a challenge and one that we relish, I think. But as I say, accidental entrepreneurs, I was never planning on doing any of this.
I know you call yourself an accidental entrepreneur. Often an entrepreneur sees a need that is not being met and they think, well, if no one's doing it and I see it, then I've got to embrace it. You may give a lead to it, but then you get the right team or group around you to enable you to deliver what you can deliver, and then others that sort of, because I'm sure once you opened this up, others saw the same need that maybe they didn't see in the way you saw it. So it is that entrepreneurial gift, or you could say insight, or the Lord, or the Spirit, or whatever, that you see it and you haven't closed your eyes to it. You've like, we've got to do something.
Yes, and it's interesting actually that you frame it like that, because what we found is that a huge number of our staff come to us because they have identified the same need and they've gone through that same process that I did of going, well, is anybody meeting this need? And then they find us. And so actually, we haven't really had to advertise for work because people come to us and say, I'm really passionate about this. And we say, great, next time we're interviewing, can we interview you? And most of our staff have come to us that way because they've also seen the need, but maybe haven't got that same drive to actually set something up, but really want to be part of an organisation that is working with carers and offering them counselling. And time again, I hear people say to me, I've been working with carers and I really wanted there to be an organisation, and then I found you.
So you see, you're more an entrepreneur than you think, Jenny, because you went ahead and did it and you set it up and you were tenacious enough to say, I'm going to have a go. There must be something in you, in your DNA, if we were to look back, that was a bit like that.
Yeah, I mean, I do like an adventure and I've lived in lots of different countries as well. So I'm always open to an adventure. So I suppose this is just kind of my new adventure, doing something a bit different.
People may be listening and they may be a reluctant entrepreneur. They may be exactly where you are. What would you say to them if they're listening to you today, Jenny, where you've done this and you're now not living the dream, but you're on the journey? And some days it's good, some days it's bad, but you're still in that initiation stage, really, in where you are, aren't you?
Yes, I mean, I would definitely say be brave, especially if you're the kind of person actually who does like an adventure, then this is definitely an adventure. Perhaps if you're the kind of person who likes to be told what to do all the time, it's maybe not for you, but it really does tick a lot of those boxes of kind of like, this could be fun, but I'm living on the edge a little bit all the time, not knowing how it's going to work out. And yeah, I'm wired to be the kind of person that gets joy from that. So if you're the kind of person who gets joy from the not knowing and the unpredictable, then if you've got an idea, to go for it.
That is an entrepreneurial spirit. That is what it looks like. That is what it's going to do. And I think what you've done is very much that. Obviously, the finance was an issue, but you've now brought on an economist that you knew back in the day, which relationally would be really strong. You've developed in your therapy, which is amazing. And so you can deliver that. But this other new space is part of the space for the adventure, the growth, the development. And who knows where you'll be in 5 years' time.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that we'll be out there and that your listeners won't be Googling us because they've never heard of us, and they'll be going, oh, counselling carers. Yes, I know them. They provide all the counselling services for anyone who's got caring needs in my area.
See, that's what a visionary entrepreneur thinks. We're going to be the go-to place that everybody that needs this is going to look out for. You obviously have a family. You're married. How do you juggle all of this in your life?
Well, one of the things that you learn quite early on as a therapist is about boundaries. You know, when our 50 minutes is up, it's up, and you've got to kind of hold those things. And so I'm quite similar in my work, actually. I'm very boundaried around this is work time and this is home time. And for me, one of my values kind of personally is that I really want to be there after school for my children. So I finish work at 3:00. There's occasional moments where that might be different, but actually on the whole, that's what I do. And that boundary is really clear. And so I think for all of us, actually, the opportunity is there. Sometimes we tell ourselves that, oh, well, this is more important and I've got to do that. But actually what I found is that as I have honoured those boundaries in our family of what kind of feels important, actually, there is always time. It comes from somewhere and we get the things done that we need to get done. But we don't sacrifice, and I know Rich, who I work with, would agree, like we don't sacrifice the things that really matter either, because actually if we don't take care of ourselves and we don't take care of our team, we can't take care of the people who are coming to us. And so it's really important actually that we set a good example and that we keep to what matters to us.
You're obviously quite a disciplined lady, Jenny. You've learned some key lessons. The growth has been amazing. You've put boundaries in place. You're a therapist. But what an adventure from where you were to where you are. And the amount of lives that you've had the privilege of impacting must give you so much fulfillment.
It is really incredible to see that, because actually for even one person who comes through our door, there's usually husbands, wives, parents, children who are all impacted by that person feeling kind of more emotionally stable and like they're actually being looked after themselves. And so, yeah, already the number is well into the hundreds of people whose lives have been changed. And every time we get feedback and people say what an incredible service it's been and how transformative it's been, it really is very meaningful for us. In some ways, it doesn't matter whether that's hundreds or thousands or just one, because actually making that difference for one person also really matters. It's one of the joys for me of still having very much my fingers in the pie of doing the therapy, is that I get to build really important relationships with people. And we're all doing it separately. But for me, you know, my clients are people I really passionately care about. And it's really wonderful to see how their lives change through just having that space to talk about what's going on for them.
Jenny, it's been great to talk to you. I'm not going to call you the reluctant entrepreneur. I'm going to call you the entrepreneur that saw a need and is now seeking to meet that need with all of your gifts and abilities. And I'm excited about what is going to be in the future. I'm excited about hearing the stories even up until now, which there's no greater privilege, I don't think, than seeing someone else's life being more complete, more whole, and free by what you do and how you do it. There's no greater privilege than that, isn't there?
No, it's really wonderful. And I really appreciate having the chance to talk to you today. And I think if anybody has been listening and thinking, oh, goodness, I could benefit from that, then counsellingcarers.org is our website. Just drop us a line and we are here for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Gospel Entrepreneurs. It's been great to have Jenny, the reluctant entrepreneur, but actually entrepreneur nevertheless. It's been great to be with you. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks a lot, Roy.
God bless you.